Well, let me tell you about a brand new religion, the Church of Leftism. If you disagree with them, you're a Nazi. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sharma Show. Thank you very much for watching me today. Thank you very much for joining. I appreciate you. So this is something that I've seen develop over many years, and it's a curious little thing. So liberals have been teaching us for so many years that racism is horrible and it's terrible and it's horrible to judge someone or mock someone based on the color of their skin, based on an immutable characteristic that they cannot control. And obviously, I agree. Obviously, racism is terrible. Attacking someone or discriminating against someone for something that they cannot control is obviously horrible. What's that now? There's some notes. Okay. It's obviously horrible to discriminate against someone based on their race as long as they agree with our political and cultural views. So something very interesting with regards to this happened in Britain recently, where the Labour government, which is in opposition, made a claim that the Conservative government that is in power does not understand race and racial inequality. And the Home Minister of the Conservative government, Preeti Patel, who is herself a woman of colour, responded to it brilliantly.
But I'm really saddened that the Honourable Lady has effectively said that this government doesn't understand racial inequality. Well, on that basis, Madam Deputy Speaker, it must have been a very different Home Secretary who, as a child, was frequently called a Paki in the playground. A very different Home Secretary who was racially abused in the streets, or even advised to drop her surname and use her husband's in order to advance her career. A different Home Secretary recently characterised, if Madam Deputy Speaker I can say so, in the Guardian newspaper as a fat cow with a ring through its nose. Something that was not only racist but offensive, both culturally and religiously. This is hardly an example of respect, equality, tolerance or fairness. So when it comes to racism, sexism, tolerance or social justice, I will not take lectures from the other side of the House. I have already said repeatedly, there is no place for racism in our country or in society. And sadly, too many people are too willing, too casually, to dismiss the contributions of those who don't necessarily conform to preconceived views or ideas about how ethnic minorities should behave or think. This, Madam Deputy Speaker, in my view, is racist in itself.
Now that speech clearly is brilliant, and I'm very happy she brought this issue up because we've seen a bit of a trend develop around the world in the last few years. We've seen a new religion crop up. So we already know the three main Abrahamic religions. So the progressives and the leftists, they think they're too good for these religions. They've moved away from these religions now. But based on the central concept of these religions, they have created a religion of their own, the religion of social justice and the Church of Leftism. So according to the gospel of the Church of Leftism, people of color are oppressed, and so they must act, think, and behave in a certain way. You simply can't think differently. Because if you think differently, then you're obviously going against the principles of the Church of Leftism, which means you're an enemy of the church and it's fine to racially abuse you then. I've said this before and I'm going to say this again. This is basically the Abrahamization of the progressives, of the social justice warriors. Just like the Abrahamic religions, they have divided humanity into two parts, the believers and the non-believers. And I'm pretty sure this guy is the prophet of the new religion. So you must think a certain way. And if you do not think that way, if you do not consider yourself oppressed, if you do not consider yourself a victim, then you're obviously a heathen or a kuffar, a non-believer who will most certainly burn in the eternal hellfire of social justice. You are a person of color. I respect you and I want to hear you and I want to hear your opinions. Tell me. Oh, well, all right. Thank you. I think that all criticism of Islam isn't Islamophobia. Burn him at the stake, and this has become a religion to such an extent that the believer, just because they agree with the Church of Leftism, will be defended even if they commit the most egregious of crimes. Like when the liberals did not say a peep about the Rotherham grooming gangs where 1,500 young British girls were sexually abused, and people kept their mouths shut for fear of being called racist, for fear of disagreeing with the Church of Leftism. Why? Because the people who were perpetrating these horrendous crimes were Pakistani Muslims. So they're Muslims and they're brown, which means they're doubly oppressed, and who on paper agree with the principles of the Church of Leftism, which means they are the believers and they must be defended at all costs. So according to the Church of Leftism, people who do not think like them need to be weeded out, which means we're going to have an inquisition, everyone. So a liberal comedian recently shared a tweet with a unflattering photo of Preeti Patel saying, "Shall we have a curry for dinner tonight, Preeti?"
What are you, stupid? What's the matter with you? I apologize. What's the matter with you?
People were lapping this up. They were like, oh, this is just comedy, calm down. But let's just switch the roles a little bit. Imagine this was a conservative white man that was saying this about a brown woman of color from the Labour Party. The bloody country would have burned down, man. He would have been called a racist and a Nazi. It would have been called the most egregious form of racism seen in Britain. And people would have said, see, this is why Britain's such a racist society. But because she's a non-believer and the comedian who's attacking her is a believer in the Church of Leftism, then it's fine. Remember The Guardian, the left-leaning woke newspaper who always takes the sort of left-leaning position on most issues? This is how they depicted Preeti Patel. Yeesh. Given her Hindu identity and her Indian origins, I'm sure you can see how that can be extremely offensive. But no. She was denounced in the Huffington Post as a pawn in white supremacy, as if she has no agency, no decision-making capabilities of her own. She's basically a brainless puppet being controlled by white people. A Guardian writer also said that she was a minister with brown skin wearing a Tory mask. Wow. Tell us how you really feel, man. The Labour MP Nadia Whittome shamefully stirred up racial antagonism by accusing Preeti Patel of using her identity as an Asian person to silence Flo Eshalomi as a black person. But it's fine because racism towards Preeti Patel isn't racism really, because she's a disbeliever in the Church of Leftism. She's a heathen. She's a kuffar. The funny thing is, even Muslims who the Church of Leftism considers extremely oppressed, even Muslims are not safe from the Church of Leftism. Racism has also been directed towards Sajid Javid, who is another cabinet minister in the Conservative government in the UK, who, by the way, is Pakistani British. And so he should be the model minority that must be defended. But he is attacked because he disagrees with the principles of the Church of Leftism. So he has been called an Uncle Tom, which is essentially a slur, which means you're a race traitor. And then comes Majid Nawaz. Majid Nawaz is a Muslim reformer who has worked extensively with atheists like Sam Harris to create a dialogue and to help reform Muslim society. And he was one of the few people who spoke up vocally about the Rotherham grooming gangs, for being a minority, for being brown, for being a Muslim. Just because he disagrees with the commandments of the Church of Leftism, he was called Sam Harris's Muslim validator and later his lapdog.
Holy shit, dude.
Oh, it gets worse. Murtaza Hussain of The Intercept posted a photo of Sam and Majid in conversation using the words, "Nice shot of Sam and his well-coiffed talking monkey." When challenged, the writer doubled down, deciding that Majid was in fact a native informant and nothing but Sam's porch monkey.
What you got there?
Racism. But it's okay. The guy with The Intercept, he's a liberal, so it's clearly not racist. And even in America, think of people like Rashida Tlaib, think of people like Ilhan Omar, who have constantly made anti-Semitic remarks and who have partnered with organizations like Miftah, who have openly celebrated Palestinian suicide bombers. Can you ever imagine somebody saying that about Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar? Somebody saying that Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are porch monkeys of the Muslim Brotherhood. Holy crap, man, the world would end. They would be called Nazis, they would be called white supremacists if anybody ever said that to them. But that's because Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib agree on paper with the principles of the Church of Leftism, and so they will be defended. Even in India, it's considered absolutely fine to abuse Hindus for their religious beliefs. It's fine to abuse them and call them cow piss drinkers, cow dung eaters. This is something that even terrorists have said before they've killed Hindus. And that's fine because Hindus who like their culture, who do not hate their own culture, are obviously disbelievers in the eyes of the Church of Leftism. So you can say all that kind of nasty stuff about Hindus, but try saying that about Muslims and burn him at the stake. You get the point. See, people like Preeti Patel, people like Majid Nawaz, people like Sajid Javid, they have committed the cardinal sin. And that sin is that they think for themselves. And that sin is not thinking of themselves as a victim. The left loves nothing more than to wheel out these minorities and talk about how oppressed they are and how racist these Western countries are. And look, there is racism. I completely accept that. But when the left talks about diversity and accepting diversity and loving diversity, well, you also have to accept the diversity that does not agree with you. That is how diversity works. Most British Hindus and Sikhs and even many Muslims like Majid Nawaz and Sajid Javid, they buck the trend of painting minorities as oppressed and sad and downtrodden and people who hate the Western countries that they live in. In the Church of Leftism, the only reality for Hindu culture is the caste system, and the only reality for Western countries is racism and patriarchy. And it's a vicious cycle for Indians really, because there's been a steady increase in hatred towards the Indian community, particularly the British Hindu community, because a large portion of the British Hindu community votes for the Tories. And now there's been attacks on India and Hindus from the Liberal Brigade in the United States as well. People like Hindus Against Hindutva, people like Ilhan Omar and AOC and Bernie Sanders supporters. And the reason that British Hindus are voting Tory, because they know that the left will never accept them, because the left does not want diversity that they don't like. And the way many British Hindus think and the way many British Sikhs think makes them race traitors in the eyes of the left. So Indians are in the unique position of being hated by both sides. They're hated by the ultra-conservatives for being non-Christians and non-whites, and they're hated by the liberals for thinking differently as well. And I want to ask you as well, do you agree with my assessment that the social justice warriors and the social justice ideology has become a religion unto itself as well, and that they also exclude people who do not think like them when they talk about diversity? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Once again, guys, if you liked today's episode, make sure to leave a like, leave a thumbs up. It helps me out, it helps the channel out. Leave a comment down below as well. If you like the Sham Sharma Show and if you'd like to support the Sham Sharma Show, make sure to support the show on Patreon. You will get access to the show's WhatsApp and Discord servers as well, and you will help me create broad content like this, create new channels, and get our message out to a greater audience as well. If you like the Sham Sharma Show, if you liked today's episode, and if you have not subscribed already, what are you doing? Huh? The button's right there, man. Just click the button and subscribe. Press the bell icon. Check out our video here and a video here that I'm sure you'll really enjoy as well. I will see you for the next episode, and until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys soon.